Hello and welcome to our webinar, Why Does Surrogacy Cost So Much? My name is Carol Weathers, and I am the founder and program director for Building Families. I have been involved in surrogacy arrangements for 20 years now. As you can imagine, I have seen much happen in the field of surrogacy, including some really great advances medically and legally speaking. I have also seen the cost rise significantly over the past 20 years. I expect that by the end of this webinar, you will have a better understanding of how and why these costs are necessary in every arrangement in order to reach a successful and safe ending for all parties. I will start with addressing some of the administrative items to help ensure this is a great experience. I want to mention that my computer skills do have their limits, so let me apologize in advance for any slide mix-ups. Fortunately, I do have my IT guy here on hand ready to assist. First, we will be muting everyone during the presentation, so only my voice will be heard. As soon as you think of a question, please send it to me via this webinar. You should type your questions in the chat box located in the GoToMeeting control panel. I will answer all questions at the end of the webinar. If for some reason our webinar internet connection is interrupted, we will attempt to reconnect for 15 minutes. If after 15 minutes we are unable to reconnect, we will email you with the rescheduled date and time. And lastly, please understand that my role here today is not to dispense legal or medical advice, as I am neither a lawyer or a doctor. I am providing you information that you could encounter yourself by doing investigative research, as it is public information. Now let's move on to the webinar. I'm going to discuss the 5 main financial components involved in a surrogacy arrangement, which are compensation paid to the surrogate mother, medical costs, legal costs, agency fees, and other expenses that a couple should be prepared for. Please note that any process that I mention is applicable in the state of California, as that is where we do business. As you must know, there is a significant emotional side to surrogacy, and I would never diminish that in any way, as it is one of the most critical components. However, our purpose today is to understand the financial aspects of surrogacy. So in the next half hour, I will be outlining the process discussing these 5 key points. Please note that this information is general, but your agreement should be specific to your case. You've probably seen this picture on my website. This is from one of our cases. I personally believe that our surrogate moms are absolute angels. You can't really put a price on a surrogate mother's contribution in this, but we really need to for you, obviously. Although their motivation must absolutely be altruistic, and we all agree that a baby truly is a gift, there is value in this that we have to put into a number. So money is involved, and it is necessary. We have to offset her expenses, of course, which we'll get into in a little bit. But there is the other area that a lot of people just really don't talk about, and that's the risk. Pregnancy can be dangerous for anyone. And then throw in the possibility of multiples. I mean, we currently have a 40% twin rate ourselves, and most surrogate moms have never been pregnant with twins, so you can't really know how that's going to go. I can tell you about a recent delivery we had that was twins. The surrogate mom made it all the way to 39 weeks, which is an incredible feat all in itself, because most twins really come by the 36th week. So needless to say, we were super excited, and she did deliver a healthy boy and a girl to her couple. But soon thereafter, the surrogate mom started to hemorrhage, and thankfully she was in a state-of-the-art hospital, well-trained physicians, and of course they saved her life, which is the most important thing, but they also saved her uterus and her ability to go on to have more children if she wanted. I have clients who have had hysterectomies due to this very thing, as their own quality of medical care was not as good as ours, and this was the only way they could save her life. I have to admit, when this whole thing was happening, we were all there at the hospital, and we were scared. I mean, it certainly is a dangerous situation. But then when the doctor came out and he said, don't worry, the bleeding's under control, and the surrogate doesn't even need a blood transfusion, we were very, very relieved. But, we started talking about other surrogate moms in other countries, like Georgia, India, the Ukraine. If this had happened there, they most likely would have died. I mean, they don't have the quality of care that we have here. And talk about risk. These women are much more at risk for the worst possible outcome, yet they're being paid significantly less than the surrogate moms here. And there's no provision for their families should this happen. The pregnancy mortality rate in the U.S., we recently looked this up, is 8 in 100,000. But in countries such as the ones I just mentioned, it's closer to 8 in only 1,000. So, I mean, these numbers are startling, and you really don't hear anyone talking about it. So when you consider whether or not a surrogate mom should be paid, just think of the risks she is taking, and I'm sure you will agree that compensation is definitely indicated. Now, having done this work now for 20 years, I know that not every arrangement goes as smoothly for others as it does for us here. And I think one of those issues, the biggest issue, is because the compensation and the reimbursement of expenses are not clearly outlined. Let's discuss that now. The compensation currently is between $0 and $75,000, and that really depends on the arrangement type. It is a large range, I know, but it is determined by the type of whether it's a relative, sister for sister, agency represented, or independent freelance. Arrangements between relatives is typically not handled by an agency. However, many families do hire the agency as a consultant to ensure they are doing things correctly. There is a substantial financial savings, as a surrogate mother in this case typically receives no compensation, and the agency often discounts their fees as well, since the process of locating the surrogate mom is done. The agency type arrangement is typically very structured. I mean, the agent does have a payment plan that all the surrogate moms fall into. The repeat surrogate moms do tend to receive a higher compensation due to their experience. The range these women are paid is between $25,000 to $40,000. Our surrogate moms receive $30,000 when they are a first-time surrogate and $35,000 when they repeat. We do limit the number of times she can act as a surrogate mom due to the increased risks involved in each pregnancy that she has. The independent arrangement is completely different. The surrogate mom advertises herself, typically on the internet. She looks for email lists that intended parents are on, and she rationalizes her higher fees due to the risk she believes she is taking by not going through the safety of an organized program. And she also believes that the couple have saved significantly by not hiring an agency, and therefore she feels entitled to receive some of those savings. You can see these fees range between $45,000 and as high as $75,000. The reimbursement of expenses. Now this is the part that can get really sticky. And typically when a couple regrets not going through an agency, it's when it comes to this. Because who determines what expenses are reasonable? If it is specified in your legal agreement, then it's clear. But even then, some things may need to be reasoned out. A surrogate mom can ask for anything she deems as related to her surrogate agreement. I can give you an example. I read recently about a surrogate mom who thought her reimbursement of expenses should include any food expense that was directly related to her cravings. This was an independent arrangement, so the couple had no one to counsel them or their surrogate mom, and they felt like they had to comply with her demands, even though they didn't feel it was fair or appropriate. Now, if you have a good agent, they will help the surrogate mom realize what is reasonable and therefore keeping the cost down. It can be difficult to reason with a pregnant woman, but it is impossible when she is pregnant for you. Too many emotions come into play, and no one wins in that situation. We realize that, and we counsel our couples and the surrogate moms to keep the relationship social and let us handle any business. But with no agent or middle person, this task is much more difficult, as money is always a touchy subject between two persons in general, but especially between intended parents and their surrogate mother. But regardless of the type of arrangement you enter, be sure these items are addressed in your contract so they are not discussed or negotiated once the surrogate mom is pregnant. This is not a fair negotiation. The other area is medical costs. One IVF attempt, and including the medications, can range anywhere from $15,000 to $35,000. And then there's the cost relating to the pregnancy and the birth of the baby. We're going to get into that in just a second. For the IVF process, clinics typically offer you two plans. There's the pay-as-you-go, which means that you just pay for each service as they're performed, and that cost can range anywhere from $15,000 to $25,000 depending on what those items are. And many times a clinic will offer what they call a success plan or a guarantee plan, and it tends to be more global, and it typically includes two IVF attempts at a lower rate. So instead of paying $15,000 to $25,000, you're paying, let's say, $35,000, and that covers two IVF attempts. However, if you do get pregnant in the first try, there is no refund. And what happens if you need more than two attempts? Well, unfortunately, there is no limit, so you will pay for each service after that. Now, the cost relating to the birth of the child, the bulk of that typically is covered by the surrogate mom's health insurance. So it is absolutely imperative that she have health insurance to cover her pregnancy and delivery. There are not many options out there, but your agent will help you locate an appropriate policy. They do exist, so I can tell you that all of our surrogate mothers have health insurance. Now, you have to be a good consumer when you're shopping for a policy. If you're helping your surrogate find one, make sure you understand the coverage perfectly and what the extent of what it will cover. Because typically it will never cover the newborn baby. Just the surrogate mother's pregnancy and delivery, and literally when they cut the cord, those expenses for the child become the couple's. You can expect the premiums, co-payments, and deductibles for a single birth to be about $10,000. This is for a private policy. And if it's twins, probably closer to 15. As I mentioned earlier, the intended parents should make sure they have coverage for their newborn baby and that they understand how it works. This is critical too, because you want to make sure that you follow their rules or they won't pay anything. Now, the legal costs range between $1,500 and $8,000. And this is another area that the services performed by the attorney varies, and therefore so does the fee. And in this range is also the court filing fees and all of the legal costs associated with the pre-birth order and all the legal documents necessary to ensure the couple go home with their baby legally. You can read here the highlights of what an attorney's role is, but the most important thing the lawyer can do for the intended parents is to be knowledgeable and up to date on the latest changes in the law. He must have extensive experience, as the legal process is what ensures the intended parents go home with their baby in the end. Never ever skimp when choosing a lawyer, and never ever use the template legal agreements that can be found on the internet. You will also see that the attorney will act as the escrow agent. This is another critical piece, as there have been reports in the last couple of years about agencies that have been acting as the escrow. And, they're not bonded. We're not. So when you put money in trust, if you will, with someone, there is a risk of theft, and unfortunately that is what has happened. That is such an important area, and all of our intended parents' money is with a bonded entity, basically the lawyer. So you must be certain your funds are safe, and that's definitely the way to do it. And it obviously costs money to have a lawyer manage the trust fund, but that is money very well spent.